It was just another routine day at the airport. I had been traveling for what felt like hours, waiting at the gate to board my flight to San Francisco. I had a couple of meetings lined up, nothing big, just the usual tech networking stuff. But it wasn't supposed to be like this. The air felt heavy, almost like something was going to happen. I glanced at my phone, scrolling through the emails I hadn't had the time to respond to earlier. That's when I noticed them. 2 gate agents, walking towards me with an air of determination. At first, I thought maybe I had missed an announcement, or that they needed to ask me something about my boarding pass. "Miss, could you come with us?" the woman in the navy blue uniform said. She had this sharp, almost dismissive tone, which immediately made me uneasy. I'm not a confrontational person, but something about the way she looked at me made my heart race. "Is something wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I hadn't done anything wrong, so why was I being singled out? "Please just follow us," the man beside her added, his voice flat and unfazed. I stood up, my mind racing. What was happening? Was there some kind of mistake? "Do you know who I am?" I asked, my words barely above a whisper, trying to break the tension with a little humor, but it fell flat. The woman didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced at her colleague, who nodded, signaling for me to follow them. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I walked behind them down the narrow hallway. I couldn't help but wonder, was this really happening? What was going on here? It's funny, isn't it? How a moment that feels so small, just waiting for a flight, can suddenly turn into something so much bigger. We reached a small, isolated corner near the gate. The hum of the airport was muffled here, like the rest of the world was fading away, leaving only the 3 of us standing in this strange, awkward space. The man glanced over at the woman, who didn't meet my gaze. It felt like a silent conversation passed between them, something I wasn't part of, but I could sense it. "You're not allowed to board the plane," the woman finally said, her voice clipped, but still holding that strange, authoritative tone. "There's a situation with your ticket." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I booked everything correctly, I double-checked everything." I could feel my pulse quicken, a slight panic rising. Was there some kind of system error? "Let me see your identification again," the man said, pulling out his tablet. I handed it to him without hesitation, though I was still unsure what this was all about. He swiped through the screen, his eyes scanning something, then stopped. He turned it toward the woman, their eyes locking again. "Are you sure?" the man asked her, his voice tinged with a bit of doubt. The woman's expression didn't change. "Yes, I'm sure." There was a moment of silence before she turned her attention back to me, suddenly softening just a fraction. "Look, this is nothing personal," she said, though I wasn't sure if I believed her. "We just need to clear up some things. You can't board just yet." "But why?" I finally asked, my voice rising in frustration. My hands were shaking now, but I tried to steady them by gripping my phone. The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she just stared at me. I could feel her eyes narrowing, and for a brief second, I wondered if it was because of how I looked, or where I was from. But I quickly dismissed the thought. I wasn't just some random passenger. I was part of something bigger, something they didn't know yet. I felt my stomach drop, but I didn't let the frustration show. I wasn't about to let these gate agents throw me off course. I had worked too hard to get here, and no one was going to make me feel small, not today. "Could you please explain what's going on?" I asked, forcing calmness into my voice. "I'm on a tight schedule, and I'm just trying to get to my meeting." The woman didn't seem to hear me. She was still glancing at her tablet, tapping on it absently as if she was deep in thought. "Your name," she began slowly, her eyes flicking to me. "It matches someone on a restricted list." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I kept my expression neutral. "A restricted list? What does that mean?" "I'm just a tech consultant trying to get to a meeting." You're connected to a larger corporate entity, the man said, his voice almost like a whisper now. This isn't just about you. There are complications. Now I was really confused. What was he talking about? Complications? Restricted list? None of this made sense. I don't understand, I said, taking a step forward, a mix of frustration and curiosity overtaking me. I booked this flight, paid for it like everyone else, and I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be allowed to board. This is ridiculous. The woman, after a long pause, finally met my eyes. For the first time, I saw a flicker of recognition, or was it hesitation? Her lips parted slightly, as if she were about to say something, but she stopped herself. Then, as though finally realizing the gravity of the situation, she spoke. Your name, it's not just connected to a tech firm, is it? She asked softly. No, I said, standing tall now, feeling a sense of power I hadn't expected. It's connected to the tech firm. The one that's been making headlines. I'm the heir to the dynasty. There was a long, heavy silence. I could see their minds racing, scrambling to process the new information. The woman's eyes widened just slightly, and the man cleared his throat uncomfortably. And you're telling us this now? The man asked, his voice shifting into an entirely different tone, almost apologetic. I nodded, my confidence rising with each passing second. Yes. And now, I suggest you fix this situation before it escalates. The shift in their demeanor was instant. The woman stepped back, her posture straighter, as if realizing she had been on the wrong side of this interaction all along. The man, who had previously seemed so certain, now looked unsure. I'm sorry, miss, he stammered, clearly trying to adjust to this new reality. We weren't aware of your connection. There was an awkward pause, and I could tell they were scrambling for words to explain themselves, to backpedal from their earlier actions. But there was no escaping the fact that they had just tried to stop someone with far more influence than they had imagined. I wasn't just any passenger. I was the future of a billion-dollar tech empire, one of the most powerful in the world. My family's name was everywhere, and though I kept a low profile, my presence had a ripple effect wherever I went. I understand this is a mistake, I said, forcing my tone to remain calm and controlled, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. But I need to be on that plane. Now. The woman nodded, though her face was still flushed with embarrassment. She pulled out her phone and began typing quickly, likely trying to contact someone higher up the chain, someone who could fix this mess. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the realization settling in that this wasn't something that could be easily swept under the rug. You'll have to wait a moment, she said, still not meeting my eyes. I folded my arms across my chest and glanced at the clock. If they didn't clear this up soon, I was going to miss my meeting. And if I missed this meeting, the fallout would be far worse than any delay. Minutes felt like hours. The man exchanged a few more words with the woman, their conversation too quiet for me to catch, but I could see their panic. It was a moment of clarity for them, they had messed up, badly. Then, finally, the woman turned back to me. We've contacted the supervisor. He'll be here shortly. I raised an eyebrow. And how long will that take? Not long. Please just, remain here. The longer I stood there, the more I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. I could sense the judgment, the realization that they had judged me too quickly, made assumptions that were now biting them in the back. And that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I hadn't even begun to show them just how much influence I really had. The next few minutes dragged on in a heavy, suffocating silence. The woman and man exchanged tense glances, occasionally stealing looks at me, but neither of them dared to speak. I could tell they were waiting for someone to come in and make everything better, for them, anyway. I, on the other hand, was tired of waiting. I wasn't just going to stand here and let them continue to fumble their way through this. The clock was ticking, and the stakes were rising higher by the second. My meetings, the deals, the entire trajectory of the company, everything depended on this moment. I reached for my phone again, dialing my father's number. He would fix this. He always did. The phone rang, and after what felt like an eternity, he picked up. "Dad," I said, my voice low but steady. "There's a problem at the gate. They won't let me board." There was a pause on the other end. I could almost hear his mind processing the situation. "Who's they?" he asked, his tone suddenly sharp. "Two gate agents. They're holding me up for some made-up reason, claiming I'm on some list. They haven't told me much, but it's clear they don't know who I am." "Put them on the phone," he said immediately, his voice now all business. I glanced at the agents, who had been watching me carefully. "Can you put your supervisor on the phone?" "Now," I said, making sure they understood the urgency. The man looked at the woman, then back at me. He stepped forward, his hand reaching for his radio. "I'll get him," he said, clearly on edge now. I took a deep breath, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. The fact that they were now trying to involve their supervisor only proved how much they had misjudged the situation. The woman handed me her radio with a forced smile. "He'll be right on the line." I took it, pressing the device to my ear. I could feel the power shifting now, the weight of my family's legacy settling around me like a cloak. This wasn't just a random hiccup at the airport anymore. This was the beginning of a much bigger story. "Yes." A calm voice answered on the other end of the line. "This is my name," I said, my voice firm and clear. "I'm the heir to Tech Dynasty, and I need to board my flight immediately. These agents have made a mistake, and I suggest you correct it." There was a long silence, and I could almost hear the supervisor's surprise. "Just a moment, miss," the voice said, suddenly sounding far more deferential than it had before. "Let me handle this." Within moments, the entire atmosphere shifted. The man and woman looked at each other, realization dawning on their faces. They hadn't just stopped any random passenger. They had tried to stop the future of a $1 billion company. And now, they were about to face the consequences of that mistake. I didn't need to wait long before the supervisor arrived. He was a middle-aged man, dressed in a sharp suit that contrasted with the airport's casual environment. His demeanor was much different from the gate agents. The tension that had been hanging in the air dissolved as soon as he stepped into the scene. "Miss, my name," he said, extending a hand with a mixture of respect and nervousness. "I apologize for the inconvenience. We had no idea about your association with Tech Dynasty. This is a serious oversight on our part." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I simply nodded. "You're right about that. This is a serious mistake. Now, I expect it to be corrected immediately." The supervisor immediately turned to the gate agents. "Clear her for boarding right now. I'll handle the rest of this internally." His tone left no room for argument. The woman looked down, her face flushed with embarrassment. The man next to her shuffled awkwardly, trying to avoid eye contact. They had clearly expected to deal with some minor issue, but they hadn't counted on me. "I'll make sure this doesn't happen again," the supervisor added quickly, his words almost rushing out. "You'll have full clearance for this flight. We'll do whatever it takes to smooth this over." I could see their efforts to salvage what little dignity they had left, but it was too late. They'd already made their move, and now they were trying to undo it as quickly as possible. "Good," I said, standing tall as I prepared to walk toward the gate. "Let's make sure this is the last time you make such an assumption about a passenger." The supervisor nodded eagerly, stepping aside as I started walking. I could feel the weight of their gaze on me, guilt, regret, but mostly, fear. Fear of what I could do. Fear of the influence I carried, even without trying. I was almost at the gate when I heard the supervisor's voice call after me. "Miss, my name, one more thing." I stopped but didn't turn around. "Yes." He cleared his throat. I just wanted to make sure you're aware, there will be no further issues on this flight. We've made special arrangements for you, to ensure your comfort. I turned around, raising an eyebrow. Special arrangements? His eyes flicked nervously to the gate agents before meeting mine again. Yes, of course. We've upgraded your seat to first class. I just thought you'd appreciate the gesture. I didn't smile, but I nodded. That's more like it. As I walked through the gate and onto the jet bridge, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This was more than just a delay, it was a reminder to anyone watching that not all passengers are the same. Some people, like me, had power and influence far beyond the walls of this airport. As the doors of the plane closed behind me, I slid into my new seat in first class. The flight attendants greeted me with polite smiles, but I could tell their attitude had shifted too. They were no longer questioning who I was. They knew. And now, so did everyone else. The hum of the plane's engine soon settled into a familiar rhythm as we ascended into the air. I leaned back into the plush first-class seat, the luxurious surroundings feeling almost too quiet after the chaos I had just navigated. The entire ordeal felt surreal, like a strange dream I was watching from the outside. The flight attendants were still moving with that heightened awareness around me. They glanced over now and then, offering me polite but careful smiles. I wasn't just any passenger anymore. I was a reminder of how quickly power could shift, and how fragile assumptions could be. I pulled out my phone, checking the time. My meeting in San Francisco was now an hour later than expected, and I still had a dozen things to finalize. My family's empire wasn't just built on technology, it was built on speed, precision, and unrelenting control. Time was money, and I had to make up for the delay. As I started scrolling through emails, catching up on a few things, a tap on my shoulder broke my focus. I turned to see the flight attendant from earlier. The one who had been part of the team that had escorted me from the gate. She was holding a small, folded envelope in her hand, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry to disturb you, miss," she said softly, but there was something different in her tone now, respect, maybe even a little fear. "But this came for you." I took the envelope, my curiosity piqued. I wasn't expecting anything. The flight had just started, and we hadn't even been in the air for long. "Thank you," I said, my voice neutral. She nodded quickly and walked away, and I opened the envelope. Inside, there was a letter on heavy, embossed paper. The letter was brief, but its message was clear: "We deeply regret the incident at the gate. Your patience is appreciated, and we want to make things right. We have arranged for a personal assistant to meet you at your destination. This is in addition to your upgraded seat. Please let us know if there is anything further we can do to accommodate you." It was signed by the airport's head of operations. My first instinct was to throw it away, to dismiss their attempt at an apology as too little, too late. But then I thought about it. They were trying to buy back goodwill. They were trying to make sure that whatever had happened at that gate never got out into the public eye. They knew that one wrong move could lead to a PR disaster, and with my name tied to everything, that was a very real risk. I folded the letter and tucked it into the seat pocket. I wasn't going to hold this against them, not yet. But I would remember. In the business world, everything had a cost. Every apology, every gesture, was a negotiation. And I wasn't done negotiating yet. The rest of the flight passed quietly. The staff, still on edge, made sure I had everything I needed. Food, drinks, anything to keep me satisfied. But I could tell that my presence alone had shifted the entire dynamic. No longer just a passenger, I had become the symbol of something much bigger. Something they couldn't afford to underestimate. As the plane descended into San Francisco, I looked out the window, already thinking ahead to the meetings that awaited me. But I also knew that the story of today, the story of how a simple mistake at an airport gate turned into a powerful reminder of who I was, would follow me. It wasn't just about this trip. It was about everything I represented. And that was only the beginning. The plane touched down smoothly, and as soon as the seatbelt sign turned off, I gathered my things. My mind was already racing ahead to the next step. I had no time to waste, my schedule was packed, and though this morning's airport drama was already behind me, I knew it wouldn't be the last time something like this happened. As I walked through the jet bridge and into the terminal, I could feel the eyes of the people around me. There was an undeniable shift in the air, a subtle tension, like everyone instinctively knew I wasn't just another business traveler. I wasn't just any tech consultant with a laptop bag. No, I was the future of one of the most influential dynasties in the tech world, and I could see the way people moved out of my path as I strode confidently toward the exit. It wasn't arrogance, but it was undeniable power, power that even in the most mundane of situations, like airport terminals, couldn't be hidden. A few moments later, a tall, impeccably dressed woman appeared in front of me. She had the air of someone who was used to being in charge, someone who knew exactly how to handle important clients. "Miss, my name?" she asked with a polite smile, her voice smooth and professional. "I'm your personal assistant for the day. I've been assigned to make sure everything goes smoothly for your meetings." I studied her for a moment, not letting my guard down. Her presence wasn't a surprise. I had expected them to offer something like this after the gate incident, a way to make amends. Still, it felt a little too rehearsed. "Thank you," I said simply, not offering much more. I wasn't sure how much I trusted these kinds of gestures. There was something slightly off about the situation, but I wasn't about to let it throw me off balance. "Your car is waiting outside," she continued, gesturing to the door. "I'll take care of the details from here. If you need anything, just let me know." As we walked toward the exit, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The way they had handled things at the airport was a sign. They were scared. They had seen the magnitude of their mistake, and now they were overcompensating, trying to win me over with their apologies and extra services. But I wasn't someone who could be bought off that easily. I'd learned that much early in life. If you had power, people would try to appease you with all sorts of gestures. But at the end of the day, the only thing that really mattered was control. As I stepped into the waiting car, the city skyline of San Francisco coming into view, I knew this was just the beginning of a larger game. My family had built an empire on calculated moves, and I wasn't going to let a little airport incident derail that. Whatever came next, I would handle it. After all, I wasn't just the heir to a billion-dollar fortune. I was a force to be reckoned with. And this story, this airport drama, was just a small, albeit interesting, chapter in the much bigger narrative that I was writing. The car hummed quietly as it made its way through the busy streets of San Francisco. Outside, the city was alive with energy, the contrast of sleek glass buildings and bustling crowds, all against the backdrop of the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. It was a city of opportunity, of innovation, and of power. The very same power that had once made me feel like an outsider, now made me feel right at home. I arrived at the building for my meeting, my mind already shifting gears, ready to tackle the day. The assistant was still with me, but she remained a quiet presence, fading into the background as I focused on what was ahead. The lobby was pristine, everything sharp and polished, a reflection of the high-level deals that took place within these walls. I walked into the conference room, where a group of tech executives were already gathered. The table was surrounded by suits and ties, faces that seemed to blend into one another, but I knew each of them by name, by reputation. These were the people who shaped the future. And today, I was there to make sure that future included my family's vision. The meeting unfolded as expected, quick, efficient, and with no room for mistakes. But as we went over the terms of the new deal, one thing lingered in the back of my mind, the airport incident. That strange moment when the agents had underestimated me, when they hadn't known who I really was. It wasn't just about them. It was a reminder that people still saw me as a girl in a world of men, still viewed me through the lens of someone they thought they could dismiss or overlook. But that had changed today. In the airport, I had been the one holding the power, even if they hadn't realized it at first. The gate agents didn't understand who they were dealing with, but the supervisor did. And that shift, though subtle, was a mark of the growing influence I was starting to wield. The meeting ended with a firm handshake, the executives in the room agreeing to the terms, each of them knowing that this deal would put my family's company on the map in ways they couldn't yet imagine. They knew who I was now. Not just as a figurehead, but as a force. Later that night, I sat alone in my hotel room, the weight of the day finally catching up with me. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the messages, emails, and texts from my family. Everything was moving forward, as it should. But there was one message that stood out. It was from the supervisor at the airport, an apology once again. This time, however, it wasn't just about making amends. It was about ensuring that their mistake didn't turn into something much worse. They'd offered compensation, a generous one, but more importantly, they had assured me that they would personally ensure that nothing like this would happen again. They understood the potential damage to their reputation. It was a reminder that power wasn't just about money or status, it was about control over the narrative. The airport had tried to control the story, but in the end, I was the one who got to write it. Tomorrow, I would head back home, and the world would continue spinning. But now, things were different. The airport incident. It had been a small reminder that no matter how powerful you think you are, you could always underestimate the people around you. But I wasn't going to let anyone underestimate me again. Not now, not ever. This was my moment, and I would make sure it was remembered.